Hi, this is Paul Rose, and welcome to my second podcast. This is part one of the story of the album Slideaway. That track is called Addiction, and that is not a title that I randomly picked out of the air. The story behind that track is, where do you begin? Well, first of all, the actual drum part and the rhythm guitar parts alternating like that came from an idea that I had. I got out of bed one morning and walked into the kitchen, and this rhythm part and the drum beat, it would walking through the, and it was just sort of struck me, and I went to the computer and I recorded into the drum machine and a basic guitar thing, and I never basically went back to it for another year or two, I don't think. And I later put it back together. I actually started work on it a year or two later, after I had stopped drinking. After homework and the sort of success that homework had, and the leading into the music business and the music industry, and then that not amounting to anything, leading to me drinking more than I ever had, really getting into trouble with drink, really. I stopped drinking. I got sober. That's 10.5 years ago since I drank now. But this is going back really early. I put that track together and I called it Addiction. And the reason it was everything moving together as one, but totally disjointed. That was the story of my life, really. I was one person, but I was moving completely and utterly out of sync, just pulling in different directions, and a lot of confusion. And when I actually came to play the guitar solo on that, there was a friend of mine from South East London, Crystal Palace. I won't name anybody I don't think I'll name anybody on these podcasts. He was a heroin addict, and when I recorded the lead guitar on that track, this guy was on the bed in the corner of the room withdrawing from heroin when I put that solo down, and he was very ill. And I think I was probably 2 or 3 months, 4 months sober, away from alcohol. And so, that track Addiction, as I say, it wasn't a random name that I pulled out of the hat. And the whole of this album, Slideaway, is very, very personal, the emotional motivation behind it. And the way that I was feeling on certain tracks, which I'm going to pull out of this album on this particular show, and tell you what they were about, and hopefully you'll be interested. This track is called School. that's one of my favourites from this CD. That was recorded in my flat on Abbey Road in northwest London, the Abbey Road, where the Beatles recorded everything they ever did. Probably about a quarter of a mile away from the actual studios. Out of the window of my flat on Abbey Road, you could see the flashing lights of the zebra crossing, and so it was a very musical place. There's more interesting stuff about that I might talk about in a little while, but like I say, addiction and getting sober and facing up to alcoholism, I got this flat, and I really had to look at myself and why I had been the way that I was and why I had been drinking the way that I was, and I certainly wasn't doing it because everything was hunky-dory. And the feelings that came through after stopping drinking are on this album, Slideaway, I believe. The beginnings of finding peace with myself for the first time in a long time came through on some of these tracks, School being one of them. And the reason it's called School is because well, it's a lesson. It's about learning, I suppose, which is really what I was in the depth of that. There's other tracks called Space 1 and Space 2 on this CD, which I may play a bit of Space 2 in a minute, actually. But that's coming from this piece that I found after stopping drinking and taking drugs. And yeah, I'll play Space 2. Now, yeah, so these are very simplistic, very personal pieces of music that I've come out with here, and I know a lot of people have been at gigs that have bought this CD and they haven't really understood why they've just heard a very loud Strat through a Marshall amplifier when they've bought this album, but I've caught up with the albums now anyway. And of course the tracks Ambient 1, 2 and 3 that are towards the end of the album, they are improvisations layered on top of each other, experimental improvisations that are layered on top of each other, and all first takes. The only time that I took a second or a third take at the most is because possibly the record level wasn't right. It wasn't because the take wasn't right, because there weren't takes. It was just trying to create an atmosphere or an environment, a musical environment. And love it or hate it, it's a personal thing. Okay, I think that's just about the end of part 1. Watch out for part 2. Be online soon. Thanks for listening, folks. Bye now.